Yo, what's up, you guys? It's your boy 3 Stacks in this thing, baby. And as promised, I'm going over an update for my Amorphages. The previous build that I had was working out as far as the draw power goes, which is something that the deck really needs desperately. But the issue was the draw power that I was playing was the wrong kind of draw power. Denying myself from special summoning on turn 1 is a major setback for me. Because while it allows you to get your setup easily, the problem is you're only able to get out one Amorphage monster, which leads to your standby. You automatically take a minus, you lose a scale, you lose your field presence. Your opponent can pretty much do what they want at that point until you reestablish. In addition to that, you can't lock your opponent from the extra deck because you didn't Pendulum summon your Amorphage. So overall, that build was pretty solid as far as establishing yourself turn 1. But as far as the follow-ups go, turn 2, you already start losing to yourself. Unless you have specific cards like the Field Spell and Infection to help maintain your resources, it's just going to be very difficult. And don't get me wrong, you were able to establish those fairly easy with all the draw power I was playing, but not being able to deny my opponent from going into the extra deck, I realized was such a crucial and important factor, that one factor just missing that could be the demise of you. So I just really felt that I needed to play a turbo build. As far as the competitive, for the competitive scene, the turbo build is just going to have a higher ceiling in general, because it allows you to set up and establish your field with more monsters, which is the most important thing with the Morphes. Their one issue is they struggle with getting a lot of monsters on board, not only to keep the scales online, because you can obviously just let them die if you want to, but also as far as damage output, they need a lot of monsters on field, because once you get that spell Infection, you're going to stack the attack and you're going to have beaters. You just need more than one beater, because also in addition to that, if your opponent just kaijus your one Amorphage, if you only control one, your scales are ineffective. They can do whatever they want and you can't stop them. So I really needed to be able to get more than one Amorphage monster on the field turn 1, but in order to do that, I have to special summon. So I decided to play a turbo build. So I'm going to showcase you guys my turbo build today. So let's start off with the main deck monsters. We have Triple Pride and Triple Wrath. These are the most important Amorphages as far as your field presence goes. I know that I really wanted to side deck these in the previous video, but through strenuous playtesting with Coolcuz, I was learning more and more that these are the highest attack Amorphage monsters in your deck. And in order to keep Amorphages on the field, you really just need high attack monsters, because you're already denying your opponent from activating spell cards, monster effects. You know, they can't go into the extra deck. And if you want to take it a step further, you can just Dark Law them, you can mistake them, you can deny them from activating cards or effects as Chain Link 2 or higher. You can pretty much deny them from activating anything as far as Spell Trap monster, monster effects, you know, searching. You can deny them from doing pretty much anything. The only thing that they can do at that point is summon a beat stick to try to attack over your Morphage, so that way they turn your scales off, because the scales only work as floodgates if you control a Morphage. So these are really important as far as keeping your field presence maintained, and also as far as your damage output goes, so that you can OTK. The deck can deny your opponent from going to the extra deck, deny them from getting monster effects. So whether they're going to virtually do, they're going to set one and pass, because you can't spam the field with monsters if you can't use monster effects, A, and B, you can't really do it if you can't go into your extra deck. So as far as the Goki matchup goes, if you have Gluttony and just any monster that has the effect that stops them from going to the extra deck, they're going to set one and pass. They can't really do anything. And then at that point, you're just going to OTK them. And these are how exactly you're going to do that. So these are really important as far as your field presence goes, like I said. In addition to that, their skills are not always going to be that bad, which is what I was realizing, because this can help you in the Draco matchup to stop them from tributing. And this can help you in the Trickstar matchup, which just stops you from getting burned, which is really important. So they can't do that little cheesy, burn damage to try to beat you. They have to beat you fair and square, which is kind of, going to be awesome for you, because this deck has an insane everything matchup. If this deck gets to go first, it's virtually nothing that any deck can really do about it. You can even stop your opponent from hand trapping your progression, which is just insane. We'll get there when we get there. But yes, these 6, while their scales are not that important or not that impressive, their attack statistics are really what matters in the long run. They're the biggest low-level monsters that you have. And now for the floodgates that you want to be playing turn 1, we have Triple Lechery and Triple Gluttony. Now, these are probably the best high scales that you can play as far as the floodgates go, because what these effectively do is they deny your opponent from activating spell cards and activating monster effects. So if you're playing a deck like Sky Strikers, in game 1, you can actually just activate both of these and then normal summon your Pride. while you're not gonna stop them from going to the extra deck, what you're gonna do is you're gonna stop monster effects and spell effects, which I think is probably the entire deck of the Sky Strikers. If they can't activate spells and they can't do monster effects, it's not like they can actually go into their extra deck anyways, because if you consider how the Sky Strikers go into their extra deck, they have to basically, you know, like do raid, or they have to search out the engage off of the engage and get the Hornet Droves, and they can't play that. So it's really strong. And even if they go into their extra deck, what are they really going to do? Make out Hati and attack directly, and then what? Search spells that they can't play? Add spells from grave that they can't play? You know, like, it's like they can hard draw the Ray, that's fine, but what can they do after that? It's really nothing, and they can't float with Ray either. So these are pretty strong in the Sky Striker matchup. If you want to take it a step further, you can even scale Sloth and Lechery, deny them from searching, deny them from playing spells. You know, that's just another route you can go. But virtually, if you stop your opponent from activating spells and stop your opponent from activating monster effects, you got to really stop and think, what exactly can they do at that point? If all they can play is traps, you know, like, how are they actually going to OTK you if they can only play traps? Am I making sense here? So it's pretty strong. These are the most powerful of all the Floodgates to me, because they stop virtually every deck, regardless of whether it's meta or whether it's rogue. All decks need to play either monster effects or spells just to basically set up their boards that they want to make, to either set up their boards, to either set up their combos, or if they're in general just trying to establish a viable field presence, they're going to need spells or monsters to get them there. So you're effectively denying them from not only hand trapping you, but they can't get some of their most powerful plays to resolve, which is just insane. And they can't Twin Twister because they can't play scales. And what these also say is nobody can do that except for Amorphages. So I can activate monster effects, I can play my spells, it's totally fine. It just denies my opponent from doing so. Lechery also has a 1350 body, which is something to note, that it's another monster that can maintain your field presence, because you can easily boost and enhance its attack statistics through the field spell and the continuous spell called Infection. My next favorite of the Floodgate scales is actually Envy. I also like this card because he's a 2050 booty, which means that you can pendulum summon this guy out onto the field and he'll give you a viable field presence, because if you're denying your opponent from going to the extra deck and you're boosting this guy up to 2750, how is your opponent going to get over 2750 without going into their extra deck? What are they going to do? Normal Super X and Special Twist Cover? Incorrect. They can't activate monster effects. You know, you have Gluttony, so hello. And the most broken part about this monster right here, Loki, this one is my favorite one, bro. Like, this one really is, because I just think this is broken, okay? Like, it says, neither player can activate cards or effects as Chain Link 2 or higher. Like, bro, you understand how broken that is. Like, you know what this card says? They might as well have just changed the scale to your opponent cannot respond to any of your cards or effects. Your opponent cannot respond to any of your summons. Anything that starts a Chain Link, your opponent can't do anything about that. So if you have Chain Link 1 going, don't worry, it's going to resolve. This card says your opponent can't hand trap you, they can't impermanence you, they can't respond to your summons as Chain Link 2, they can't actually stop anything. Like, when you have this card in scale, when I say, brother, it is so free. It is just free. You're not even asking your opponent for a response. So you also don't have to waste time with them trying to bluff you, saying that they're thinking. They can't. There's nothing to think about. You can't respond to anything whatsoever. What are you going to do? Widow Anchor? Bro, it doesn't matter. Their effects don't activate. I don't care. Like, you're not even going to be able to play spells anyways. Long story short, like, Envy is insane. No chain blocking for Gokis, no chain blocking for Burning Abyss, no chain blocking for Dark Gokis, for PK Hero Link spam. Like, you're not even getting your extra deck in the first place. So let's go ahead and get that. Let's go ahead and establish that right now. You're not gonna get into your extra deck at all. So I don't even know how you're gonna chain block in the first place. But okay, Envy's just insane, bro. This card literally says your opponent cannot respond to anything. You don't ask them for a response because they can't. So all of your cards are going to resolve no matter what. Your opponent cannot do anything about it. If they want to do something about it, they better play Amorphages. So then we have 2 copies of Goliath, which is basically your Dark Law. This is, I consider this in a beneficial Akrute Mon, even though it's not as powerful as all the other scales. The thing is, this can be an auto win against nearly every matchup. Trickstars, Sky Strikers, Gokis, Burning Abyss. I mean, can we consider, you know, heroes, PK heroes, Dark Gokis, Think of all the best decks currently in the format. Even Dinos, Rogue decks, even Dracos, Altergeist, Paleos. If all their cards are hitting the graveyard, are not hitting the graveyard but getting banished instead, do you have any idea how much of a, like, it's not even fictional, it's an insane impediment on their progression. It slows them down so much they have to stop and establish, like they have to stop and address the issue, which is Goliath, right? And you can protect this from even being destroyed by just having your lechery. They can't play spells, you know? Or you can even make it worse where you have gluttony. So it's like now they have to Twin Twister or they can't do anything about it because they can't use Phoenix. But wait a minute, they can't go into their extra deck. It's so hard for them to actually deal with any of your Amorphage scales because they protect themselves with their floodgates. And it gets worse because anything except for Amorphage cards that hit the graveyard get banished. So in any Pendulum matchup that's not Amorphages, their extra deck does not get loaded ever. Because Pendulums, if they would be sent from the face-up from the field to the graveyard, they go to the extra deck. But since they're not going to the graveyard, they get banished instead. So if you make Electrum, you still have no cards in the extra deck. Like, that's fine. If you play a scale, it's getting banished. You can't really, like, it slows them down so much. It's just so broken. So when you have Goliath and you have a card like Twin Twister, it becomes banish 2 back rows. If you have a card like Dark Hole Raigeki, it becomes banish all monsters on the field. Are you catching my drift now? If you have Rivalry or Gozen and you flip those with Goliath, it becomes your opponent banishes every monster they control until they have a specific... Like, this card is a fine wine, my brother. It's a fine wine. It's incredible. Goliath is really strong. And then next, we have his little brother. We have Sloth. What Sloth does is he denies either player from searching, except for drawing cards. So he's a mistake. And what's really awesome, and there's only one card in my deck that searches. And it's actually the spell Amorphage Infection. Everything else, draw power, draw power, draw power. And then all the other cards, draw power. You know, it's just like, it's broken. Well, I'm sorry. I think it's Terraforming and Infection. So that's 5 cards out of my entire deck that actually search. So this card hurts my opponent a lot more than it hurts me. And you know the funny thing is you can keep this scale online for your opponent's turn, and during your standby, you just don't tribute a monster and it pops itself. So then you can do all the searching that you want. You can also search another copy of it and then just play it again and deny your opponent from searching. So Sky Strikers anyone? Goki's anyone? Trickstars anyone? True Dracos even might struggle because basically it means that they have specific cards that they can activate. So, you know, like a lot of their monsters that search, they have to play it to the field now. And then also when you have Gluttony, it doesn't even matter because their monster effects won't activate. But if you have, like, for example, Sloth and Lechery for the True Draco matchup, that's all you need. Because now, like, they're not resolving any spells and then they can't search. So that's just like, it's just adding insult to injury because if they somehow get to pop one of these scales, they can't, it's not like they can actually play another spell to get another pop. So if they pop one of these, you still deny them from playing the game of Yugioh. And there's other ways that you can combat Dracos. You know, you have Goliath. You have also Gluttony denying monster effects. You have the next card, which is actually Greed denying trap cards from resolving, which is just insane. So you have a lot of different ways that you can floodgate Dracos. And the funny thing is, Dracos is a floodgate archetype. So it's kind of like, it's just an irony thing. You know, it's very ironic that you can floodgate a floodgate deck and also deny them from ever actually flipping their floodgates, which is just impressive. So this deck's ceiling is extremely exponentially high and immense as far as going first. Its only struggle is the battle of going second, which is why the 15-card extra deck that I have cooking in the kitchen right now in the laboratory is actually all going to be going second cards, because this deck does not need anything to help it going first. All the cards to help it going first as far as establishing it, maintaining the resources, I have already implemented those as just an integration into the archetype and my main deck. So the side deck is 15 going second cards, my brother, and that's going to help the battle of going second. And the deck doesn't really need a normal summon, so you can easily play Spear Mode. You can easily play cards like Lava Golem if you want, Kaijus, Dark Hole Raigeki, Lightning Vortex, evenly matched Twin Twisters. I'm going to do the whole shebang, right? And you don't need cards like Red Reboot because you have main deck Red Reboot, which is better, and that's what we're getting at. So what Greed does is it says neither player can activate trap cards or the effects of trap cards, which is broken, except for Amorphage traps. So what this does is if you have this in scale, your Altergeist matchup is free. Your Paleozoic matchup is free. Your Draco matchup can be 50% free because you're only cutting off half their deck, right? And don't also forget that they can easily tribute their spells and pop your scales. Just keep that in mind. So what you want is you want to have lechery, because lechery stops spells and the effects of spells. And so if you have lechery and greed for the Draco matchup, that's really solid, because now all they can really do is activate their monster effects. But if you consider it, how many monsters do Dracos play in their deck? Like 6, right? So what are the other 34 cards in their deck? Spells and traps, my brother. Spells and traps. This deck is broken. This deck is broken, bro. So if you're playing Dracos, your best bet is to go lechery and greed, because now you're not only denying them from activating spells and activating traps, but they won't get their graveyard effects to pop your stuff. So it's not like they could be like, oh, well, you have Floodgate, I just tribute a trap and pop it. Nah, you can't pop my monster, you can't pop my skills. Why? Because I have these online. And you know what gets even worse? These protect themselves in more ways than one, because now your opponent can't Twin Twister them. They can't evenly match you. And if they want to use a monster effect to pop your skills, they can't, because you can play around that as well. And if you deny them from going to their extra deck, what are they really going to do? Make a Phoenix without going into their extra deck? You know what I'm saying? So yeah, it's really powerful. You have an answer to everything. You have a response to tributing any monsters, so no kaijus, no spear mode, the lava golem. You have an answer to burn strategies, trick stars, and chain burn. You have an answer to spells, to monster effects, to trap effects, denying searching. You can banish cards. You can deny your opponent from responding to anything, denying them their own. You basically say, relinquish your right to Chainlink 2, Duelist. Relinquish your right to Chainlink 2. Give it. Sign this paper, this waiver, until the end of this duel. No Chainlink 2 for you. So those are all the Morphages. They're really powerful. I like that you kind of just get this pick your poison kind of thing. It's just whatever matchup you're playing, which is that's why it's really important to have the knowledge of the meta when you play a deck like this. You want to know what's more popular, because obviously game 1, you don't know what deck you're playing yet. So you can it can be risky which floodgates you want to set up with. But ultimately, you have more generic and universal ones like Lechery and Gluttony, where it's like, it doesn't really matter what archetype it is. Every deck needs monsters and spells. But then once you know what deck you're playing after that, you can play cards like, Sloth. Like for the Burning Abyss matchup, I would honestly go for Goliath and Gluttony. Well, not even Gluttony, because it's not like they can really resolve their best monster effects, which is Engrave, if they're going banished. So I would probably go Goliath and maybe like the spell stopper. I'm not sure, but I know for sure as far as Burning Abyss goes, Goliath is pretty much all you need. If you're banishing their Dantes, banishing all their BAs when they mill, they just, they're losing. You can deny them from monster effects too, just in case they have like a monster that can outer scales, or you could just do the Lechery if you're scared they have Twin Twisters, or to stop their Sekka's Light. And then for the non-Amorphage monsters, I played 2 Jurigatos and also 2 copies of Watch Cat. Now, Watch Cat, we'll talk about her when we get there, because like nobody's really playing this card right now. It's a really good card. It just has a slow setup. But for a deck like this that kind of guarantees that there is going to be a turn 2 and a turn 3 and a turn 4, because it slows your opponent down so much, forces them to play at a pace that they're not uncomfortable, but also you can play faster than them. Cards like this, it doesn't even matter that it's a slower setup. Jurigato is really good. I want to talk about this card as well, because what this card does is in either player's battle step, you special summon this card from your hand, and then you gain 1,000 life points. That alone sold me on this card. Right? This is part of the turbo variant. This deck is a lot more explosive than the Demise build, obviously, because you can't build your boards turn 1 as good as you want. As far as monsters go, you can only summon 1, but you can get all the spells and traps you need. But with this build, you're able to get a fair amount of draw power as well, not as much as the Demise could give you, but you get a bigger field presence. This card contributes to your field presence, and then also during each player's turn, you contribute him. During each player's damage step, in fact, so this is broken, you contribute him, and that monster, you can target a monster, and that monster gains 1,000 attack. So you get 1,000 life points, and then you get to boost your Amorphages, because, if you don't have certain of your spells or your traps, your Amorphages are not going to be as powerful as you want them to be, but giving any of them 1,000 boost kind of guarantees that your opponent can't beat over them, because they don't get their extra deck, and it just really helps. So the only thing you want to be careful about with this card is if you have your own Gluttony on the field, you can't activate this card's effect. So just keep that in mind, but if you don't have Gluttony, this card's just insane. It really helps you out a lot. And it also triggers your field spell and your infection, because he tributes himself. So you're going to get a search and a draw. So you basically get a +3 off of this card. You're going to get 1,000 life points. You're going to give a boost to your monster, and then you're going to search and then draw. So you're going to get 2 free cards off of Jurigato during your opponent's turn, which helps you as far as your maintenance and as far as your resource maintenance goes as well. And then Watch Cat, I play this card. What it says is if you control no monsters, you special summon this card from your hand, right? And then during the end phase, the turn that you special summon this card through this effect, you banish this card and set one continuous spell from your deck to your field. Why that's really important is because I was looking through Amorphage cards thinking, I was like, maybe I don't have all of them. They have no way to actually search their main spell, which is Infection. And Infection is the win condition of the deck. It's like the main win condition. It boosts your Amorphages to attack heights that you've never seen. People think that this deck has weak monsters, but when you have Infection on the board, and plus it stacks, I was playing Cool Cuz on turn 2. My Sloth, my Wrath, and my Pride, one was like 4450, one was like 5250, the other one was 4150. Their attack was past 4,000, right? That's insane. Their level 4s that are over 4,000 attack deny my opponent from going to the extra deck. What is my opponent going to actually do to them? Use a monster effect? You can't activate a monster effect. What are they going to do? Pop them with an Afterburner? Like, come on now. Like, that was just broken to me. And my only issue was, even though I played 3 Infection, which is the maximum amount, there's no way to get to it outside of drawing it. And I realized that Infection is really important for my turn 2 push. For turn 2, I want to OTK my opponent. I don't want the game to last that long. So you can easily OTK with this deck if you have Infection. And it's even easier if you have 2 Infections because their effects do not counter each other. It's not a counterintuitive thing. They stack. Infection gives you 100 attack for each Amorphage card you can control, including itself, which is insane when you consider you have scales, monsters, and then that itself, the minimum you're going to get out of it is a 400 increment, which can make your littlest monsters beaters. So Watchcat is really broken because it's a way to search out Infection. You're going to set it, and then on your follow-up for turn 2, you're going to flip that Infection, and you're going to have beaters, like a board full of beaters. And then you have Yugioh, then you have the field spell. Like, your monsters are not little by just, like, most people who don't know this deck or don't play it will think, oh, they don't have beat sticks, they're highest attack monsters. You have to tribute summon for them. Nah, bro, you can have this level 4 guy right here at 4350, I'm sorry. If you have 3 Infections, this guy is just, come on now. You can't even Utopia the Lightning. Wait, you can't anyways because you can't go into your extra deck. So next up is the spells. 3 Infection. This is the most important spell of the archetype because it fixes 2 of the problems. The resource maintenance, maintaining your resources is really important for this deck because this deck, it has to suck up a lot of its resources just to keep the playstyle, just to keep the progression of your game state. To keep your scales on field, you have to sacrifice monsters, right? And it could be any monster, so you could play token generators, which I do play them. We'll get there when we get there. But this card says if any monster is tributed from your hand or your field, you get to search an Amorphage card from your deck to your hand. And it doesn't say except itself. So a lot of the times, I'll use Infection to search another Infection so that I can stack them and get that extra increment of boost in attack statistics. And then in addition to that, it says if an Amorphage monster or cards on your field is destroyed by battle or card effect, you get to search an Amorphage card. So pretty much if any of your monsters leave the field, basically, you're going to search. And then if you tribute a monster from your hand, which is kind of weird, but it can work because I guess that some of monsters that you can play as text tribute themselves, you get to search. But its base effect, the first sentence says, all Amorphage monsters on the field gain 100 attack and defense for each Amorphage card on the field. These stack. So I love having multiples, which makes it so much easier because now it's like your opponent cannot get over your Amorphage monsters as far as attacking. And then when you consider that, if your opponent can't attack over your monsters, what's the next way to get over them? Monster effects. But your opponent can't activate monster effects, what's the next way to get over them? Spell effects. If your opponent can't activate spells, what are they going to do? They're going to set traps and pass. And then on your maintenance, you just let your scale die, you search greed, play greed. Their traps are dead now. So you can protect your monsters from spells, traps, monster effects, and battle. So you know what that means? Your opponent's going to have to kaiju your monsters. Oh, wait. You have a scale that says your monsters can't be tributed. Come on now, get real. This deck is broken, bro. I don't care what anybody says. Nobody can change my mind about it. Because if you play the deck right, it's like it can nearly just auto-win. It's not autopilot because it's really difficult to play. But when you master it, it's so easy to win with this deck. The only struggle with this deck is going second. That's the only flaw to its mechanic. I feel like Konami did that on purpose because, like, if the deck could go second, comfortable, just as comfortable as, for example, like, Pinla Magicians can, that wouldn't be fair. Then this deck would be meta. Then we have triple Pot of Desires. Nearly everything in this deck is at 3. And it's so important to have a +1 in this deck because you have to sacrifice 2 cards out of your hand every first turn just to get your floodgates online. So when you play pot, you can consider it that those 2 cards have just paid for themselves, and you've replaced it with 2 more cards. So you basically go back to go to 4 cards. So you basically just lost 1, which is really strong. And also drawing into your better cards is really important. What this deck was really lacking was draw power, because you need to dig for specific cards. Because like outside of infection, it's really difficult to search your Amorphage specific Amorphages. But once you have this, like if you have this turn 1, you could trigger turn 1, obviously. But what's really important is being able to dig into your deck for your important scales and your important floodgates and your bigger monsters. And until we get the Odd Eyes Revolution Dragon, this is going to be one of the best ways that you can play the deck. Triple Desires. I still would probably keep it at 3 when we get Odd Eyes Revolution. Then I also tagged in 2 Pot of Riches. It's really broken. What it does is it shuffles 3 Pendulum Monsters from your field or face up from your extra deck or your graveyard into your deck, and then you draw 2 cards. For the rest of the turn, you can only Pendulum Summon. You cannot special summon monsters from your extra deck except by Pendulum Summoning. It doesn't even matter because the only special summoning you do is Pendulum Summoning. What does this stop? Watch Cat? It doesn't matter. And you Yugioh during your opponent's turn anyway, so this card doesn't really conflict at all. And then as far as draw power goes, this is the end of it. We play 2 copies of Ignite Reload. What I like about Reload is it's a reactive spell. I can play it whenever I want. I can even set it as a bluff. And also, it fixes my hand all the time. Like, whenever I draw too many of the same Amorphage, like if I draw, for example, 2 Wraths, I don't really think that's ideal for me. Or if I draw 2 Lecheries, I don't really want the 2 Lecheries. So what it does is it allows me to trade out my Amorphages that I already have for Amorphages that I don't have. Or it trades out the ones that aren't specific for the match type for the ones that I need. For example, if I have Greed and I'm playing against, a deck that doesn't even run traps. Or if I have too many Prides, but they're not doing burn damage. Or if I have Lechery and I'm playing against Altergeist and Paleos, they don't play spells. They have so little spells, it's not even worth it to play a spell stopper because it's just like a blank. So Ignite Reload really helps a lot. You want to make sure that as far as draw power, that this is the last card you play, because after you resolve this, you cannot draw cards through the effects, through card effects after that. You can still search, which is pretty cool, but you can't draw cards through card effects after you resolve this. So it's really important. I'm not sure if you could chain chain one to another, but I always make this the last card I play. So if I have other cards like these, I'll play these first and then play that last, so that I can still resolve all my draw power. And this is pretty much all your searchers and your drawers. So this contributes to the consistency that the deck really needs, because the deck was lacking in that aspect. Just being able to generate card advantage, being able to dig into the deck. Deck thinning capabilities were really lackluster. So just having these 10 cards, which equals out to 1/4 of your deck, really helps you out. And then as far as generating tokens, I was mentioning that I play token generators. It's really important to maintain your field presence, right? You need multiple monsters on field at all times, because both of your scales are going to need to attribute a monster. Now, don't get me wrong. There will be scenarios when you can just keep one scale and let the other one die, because that scale is stopping you from doing something that you want to do yourself. Like, for example, Sloth. You want to search, you just let them die. But other than that, you're going to be attributing 2 monsters per turn. And that goes in correlation with your infection, because you're going to be getting a search. So every standby, you special a token. That's the only effect that you care about for this field spell. Everything else is exclusive for the Infernoid archetype. So it's searchable. It's a token generator during every standby. That's really clutch, because during every standby, you have to tribute a monster. So you could generate a token off this field spell, tribute it, and you basically get a free search off of your infection, and you didn't even have to pay for it. So it generates a +1 every turn. That's what you have to consider it as. And then I play another field spell, Amorphage Persona. This one, if you already have established resources and your field presence is not lacking in any way, shape, or form, you don't need expansion. You just have Persona. This one boosts the attack and defense of all your Amorphages by 300. And then up to twice per turn, if a monster is tributed, you just get to draw. So if you tribute 2, you draw 2, which is really important, because you're going to draw 2 off of this and then search off of your infection. So you're going to get 3 cards, and then you're drawing for turn. So you're getting 4 cards for turn. That's broken. That's like having Nightmare Unicorn, and you're just drawing 4 for turn. So this field spell is really impressive. And as far as maintaining your resources, if you have these 2 on board, as long as you can keep them online and protect them, you're going to generate a lot of advantage, and you're going to generate actual legitimate pluses. And then you Desires, then you Pot of Riches. These are both +1s. Like, you're just going to get a lot of advantage. So the field spell and infection are probably the most important spells as far as the long run and the grind game goes. Then we have 2 Optimus Prime to search out, the other 2 field spells. And then for better turn 1 plays, this also helps as far as your field presence. I play 2 Ties of the Brethren. Ties of the Brethren is really powerful, and the reason being is because you have a bunch of level 4 Earth Dragons. You have 1, 2, 3, 4 Earth Dragons that are level 4 that all have different names. So your Tides of the Brethren has 4 targets. If you open with any of your level 4 Morphages, you could just Tides of the Brethren them. And what Tides does is it gives you more monsters on the field for you to either tribute for your maintenance, or if you already have a card like Scapegoat, which we'll talk about next, or the field spell, you just have damage on board, so you can just OTK, which is really strong. So Ties of the Brethren is another way that you can mitigate for this deck's weakness, which is generate field presence turn 1. Then we have Scapegoat, which obviously just helps because the Amorphage scales tribute any monster, so token generators like this and the field spell are really broken. I even at one point considered Fiend Sanctuary, just so I can summon this token and link it off into Link Karibo, and then play my scales and pin lump some and do what I want, just have the attack negator, or at bare minimum, a monster to tribute for maintenance. But Fiend Sanctuary just didn't make the cut, but you guys can definitely take it, because this is a 1-card Link Karibo, which is really important, because if you can't get your attack enhancers, your opponent's going to try to beat over your Amorphages. And then finally, I play just 1 trap for right now. I play Lysis. Lysis, what it does is make all monsters except Amorphages lose 100 attack for each Amorphage card on the field. And then whenever your scales get popped, you play another scale in its place, which is really good. That concludes the main deck. I don't play an extra deck still because it's so hard to actually go into the extra deck. This deck makes it so difficult to go into the extra deck that you can literally play 15 Winter Cherries target. By the way, Winter Cherries is going to be a 3 of in my side deck, and I'm going to build a side deck accordingly. I'm going to put like Isoldes and Firewalls and Kagaris and Hextias and Totally Awesomes and Buster Dragons and just every good like extra deck card I can think of. I know that this was very in-depth, but I felt that this was necessary to go in-depth on this profile. Let me know what you guys think. Give me your honest opinion and feedback. Thank you so much for watching this video. God bless you. Make good choices. Don't hurt your brain cells. And definitely stay tuned for future content. This deck is only going to get better in the future. 3 stacks, signing out, baby.